Welcome to Adapted, the podcast where we explore adaptations of various forms. I'm today's host, Tom, and with me is...
Bat.
Today we'll be discussing Richard III, the Shakespeare play from 1592 to 1594, somewhere in that time period, as well as Laurence Olivier's 1955 film version and Richard Longcrane's 1995 film version of the same name, starring Ian McKellen.
We should be clear. We're not going to be calling it Longcrane's version of Richard
No,
III.
we're
We're
not.
going to be calling it
McKellen's
McKellen's
version of
This is
Richard
Ian
III.
McKellen's version of Richard III.
Yeah.
That's really who
That's
owns
the
this one.
reason why you are watching the movie.
Yeah.
So I want to start off just with a side fact, I think we'll do this. I think I want to include this, just little side facts about the early modern period or Shakespeare or something. And I want to mention a figure without whom much of what we know about early modern theater commerce would probably be lost. And this is Shakespeare's contemporary Philip Henslowe, who lived from 1550 to 1660. I don't know, Pat, have you ever heard of him?
I've definitely heard the name. But
Yeah.
Is he in Shakespeare in Love?
He is very
that's
good.
what I thought. That's what I was like.
Jeffrey
that's what I know.
Rush plays him, yeah.
Yeah, that's Jeffrey Rush, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, Henslowe was a timber trader and
Didn't he win an
landlord.
Academy Award for that performance?
I thought he won it for Shine.
I think
he won it for
nominated it, though.
playing...
I think he's nominated.
Oh, was
then.
he
I thought
nominated?
I'm pretty sure he was.
Okay, I did
I'm
not
positive
realize
on
that.
I thought he was. I could be totally wrong on that, but I thought he was nominated for it.
Yeah, he was the money, right?
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah. Why are you here? I'm the money. Then you may stay.
Which isn't... Yeah, Henslowe never actually funded anything Shakespeare did, so that's a little off. But he was a timber trader and a landlord who in 1584 purchased a property in Southwark known as the Little Rose. And in 87, he and a partner built the theater titled The Rose. Starting in 1591, the theater was rented by the Admiral's Men. Edward Allen was the lead actor of that group. He's one of the most famous actors of that day. Probably Richard Burbage is the only actor who was more successful than Allen. And eventually Allen married Henslowe's daughter, and Henslowe became a backer of the Admiral's Men and moved them into a larger theater, the Fortune, which interestingly enough is like the one rectangular theater in the early modern period. Allen also owned the Paris Garden, which is a baiting venue, if you know bear baiting. It was a big competitor to Shakespeare. Do you know bear baiting?
I do, because there's a pub in England that supposedly used to have been used for cockfighting and bear baiting. And so you can still go to this pub from approximately the same time period, probably a little later, because I think it was built after the fire. But they still have like the galleries around it, and you can look down and see. So yes.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, but bear baiting, audience, is when you had a bear fight a bunch of dogs and bet on who would win. So that was Shakespeare's greatest competition. So when people today complain about reality television bringing down the level of culture, just know that Shakespeare lost viewers to that. So society is always shaky, I suppose, in a cultural sense.
As we discussed with No Country for Old Men, has time really changed?
Has time really changed? Yes.
Has it is it really worse?
Yeah.
It's all the same. Yeah.
But what makes him interesting, though, is he's the only theater entrepreneur of his day whose business diary still exists. He kept a diary from 1592 until 1609. In 1592, it was every single transaction. After that, it was a little more spotty. But he kept track of everything. So we know who got paid, which playwrights worked with which other playwrights, which commissions were there, who got lent money, and all of these things, which gives us an understanding of how a theater company worked, what props and
Has anybody
costumes.
done like a book like
Oh,
on
yeah.
this book?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's yeah, and
It sounds cool.
it's a really, really cool resource. And it was gone for a while because he died in 1616, and Edward Allen, his son-in-law, founded a college. Allen made a ton of money, and he founded a college, and the diary just was left there because he just put his father-in-law's stuff there. He didn't know what to do with it. And it was lost until about 1790 when Edmund Malone, a scholar, discovered it and he decided to cut things out of it to save it as material for later works. So he lost some things. And then it got worse. The next scholar who looked at it was John Payne Collier, who decided
He
that
gave it to his children to color on it with crayons.
no, worse. He decided the book wasn't supporting his scholarship, so he inserted forgeries into it in order to make it fit his scholarship. So we have a bunch of like fake stuff in it also. Um, but yeah, that it's a really great resource for kind of learning about this period. It's not about Shakespeare because he didn't work with Shakespeare. So though you see Shakespeare really affected the Admiral's Men, a company Shakespeare didn't work for. So whenever Shakespeare had a play out, the Admiral's Men would commission a play with the same title. So there's a Titus Andronicus, there's a Henry the Sixth Part One. There's like a bunch of them. It's really funny.
So this is the equivalent of the bands like Bare Naked Ladies who would just be like putting up their posters and be like, tonight at such and such bar, Bare Naked Ladies. Everyone would just show up expecting that and be like, this isn't what I signed up for.
Yeah, I guess so. It was, yeah, like fierce competition. There's some interesting facts I thought from reading the diary. The busiest season was between Christmas and Candlemas. Extra points if you know what date Candlemas is. Um,
January 20, no, February 6th?
Second, very good.
2nd.
February
Yeah.
2nd, yeah. And that a good play will make more than £3. So in London, £10 was about the average salary of a laborer. A good play, if it ran for a number of nights, would make £3. That was, or
Profit.
more than £3.
Profit or revenue.
That was more than profit. More than £3 in profit. No, £3 overall,
Oh my
including revenue.
gosh.
Um,
How many people were in these things that they were dividing that amongst?
oh, I want to say 12 to 15, I think we're in the
Oh, okay.
company.
I guess when I saw like because when that was one of the things I thought when we watched Henry V last week, because I'm guessing because they had like 12 musicians and like 14 actors. I'm like, how are they making any money off of
Yeah,
these?
I'm not in the musician thing. I don't think is entirely accurate, or actors would play their own music.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not a documentary, but I remember thinking that I'm like, I wonder how much of this is real from the living of
Yeah.
Henry V, and if so, how are they actually paying anybody and making a profit? But
Well, it's yeah. I mean,
there was a lot fewer.
if you're
Yeah,
making £3, like Shakespeare made about £200 a year, I would say, for his investment. But he's also a shareholder, so it's a little
yeah.
different. Playwrights were paid, I want to say a few pounds per play. Shakespeare's an exception again because he's a shareholder, so he's making his money in capital investment, not in income. But for a lot of playwrights, that's what we see in Henslow's diary. The last detail about Henslow's diary before we could get into Richard III I want to make is that we also see a collection of magic spells he bought. So he was very interested in purchasing magic spells. But if you're
I've
anybody's
seen bed knobs and broomsticks though, and it worked out well for her. She purchased them, and they were real.
fair enough,
And the guy
yes,
selling them didn't think they were real, so
maybe. So
maybe
that's
Henslow was onto something.
maybe he was onto something. So look up Henslow's diary. It is a fun resource. Find somebody who's done it. I'm gonna call it a translation, but a transcription of it because his handwriting sucks. Anyway, on to Richard III.
So Richard III, I just want to
Richard
say, Richard
III.
III is a
Mhm.
carnival. I mean, this thing is right.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's
I
it's
mean, and this is not. I mean, it's carnival. Like this thing is just it's topsy turvy world. That's why Richard III is fun. It is it is absolute. It's Shakespeare's most insane play in the sense of just what he's doing and what he's inviting the audience just to sort of have fun with because he is inviting them to have fun with. And I think that's the challenge. Richard is completely insane and he's flat out evil and you're meant to just follow the evil man the whole time and Shakespeare makes it work by making you have fun and not like the guy but have fun with what he's doing. That's why it works, right? So it's Carnival. It's Carnival.
yeah, you like him because he's competent. I think that's the difference. You
Yeah.
don't. It's one of these things you love to hate somebody. You only love to hate someone if they're the best evil. You
Yeah.
don't really like the sniveling kiss ass. That guy kind of sucks, or somebody who gets killed off early on in the action movie or whatnot.
Like Julius Caesar or something.
Yeah, yeah. You don't really. Julius Caesar is not a fun role, but
But that's the thing is like no one watches Julius Caesar to be like, wow, it's fun to watch Caesar the character on stage. Like he doesn't do anything, right? But and he's going to die and everything. It's not fun to watch it.
and
This is just
Brutus isn't fun either.
no. But Mark Antony's kind of fun to watch.
Mark Antony's
Um,
fun because he does a remarkable thing.
yeah, because he manipulates everybody to a certain extent. But I think this is just like you're meant to watch this guy do bad things and watch just how well he gets away with it for the most part. And you're a little disappointed when he doesn't,
Yeah,
even
that
though,
is true at the end. Because Richmond is such a bland
yeah,
victor. In both film versions, he's like the first film version, the Olivier version, he's like he has a ridiculous jawline and he has a stupid tan. He looks
and
so
he's
much.
Welsh. Apparently, the actor actually is Welsh. Because at first I thought, did they just make this guy do a Welsh accent for this? And I'm like, oh no, he actually was Welsh. But he actually is Welsh. But yeah, he's a very dull character.
Yeah. And so you end up you have Richard, and Richard just he lets us into it. That's what it starts with him just saying, "Look at what I'm going to do. Isn't this so delightful and fun as I pull it off?"
Plots have I laid. Like that's a great. I mean, he's having fun. Plots have I laid. Like, come on, watch what we're gonna do.
Yeah. And a lot of the supporting characters don't really pop as much. I think Clarence is an exception because Clarence has this great speech
He's just
about
got that monologue.
drowning.
That's the
Yeah,
best monologue.
it is.
It's one of Shakespeare's best monologues, I think.
Yeah, it really is one of Shakespeare's best monologues. And for the audience, it's Clarence is Richard's brother, who Richard tricks the king into imprisoning, and he has this dream about his brother Richard knocking him into the water and him drowning. And the irony later is that he's drowned in a vat of wine. So there's this kind of, um, like anti-communion thing going on with it. It's really a beautiful speech and a
Very good
creepy
speech.
end. Yeah.
I did. I performed that speech once.
Did you for
I did.
Shakespeare for audition techniques?
No, no, I performed it in the avant-garde theater class. And so I performed it hanging upside down from a ladder while someone poured water over me. And I hung upside down from a ladder saying that speech. That was our avant-garde theater
Yeah.
class. And so you just had to come up with as weird,
What
as
did
weird of stuff as you possibly could. So that was the one I did.
where did that go?
Nowhere. I
Oh,
just
that was
set it upside
it.
down while I hung by my feet from a ladder
Mhm.
and had someone pour water on me.
Okay.
That
Very
was that
good.
was
Hmm.
a very odd class.
Ah, yes, kamikaze acting. Um, anyway, yeah, that is what, I enjoy about the play. I think that, the weaknesses as we talked about, it doesn't end well, but it can't. It's sort of trapped in this position of, yeah, he has to die. You can't have this guy walk away with the kingdom in his pocket. But it's the most disappointing part of the play is how it kind of wraps up. It's also, and this is a point Harold Bloom has made, his speech, his nightmare speech when he's in the tent preparing for battle isn't very convincing. The fact that we discover he actually has this conscious that sort of manifests as a collection of ghosts in the night at the end, I find that wholly unconvincing.
Well, because there's nothing to, this would be a good lesson for writers in why foreshadowing is necessary. Like this is why I remember like when I was in high school and people would talk about foreshadowing. And I remember thinking, I'm like, why do we care? Why are we talking about this? Why is it necessary? And now you can see why it's necessary. And you can see why it's necessary because if you don't have foreshadowing, then when certain events happen, they're not convincing. And I think that's exactly what's going on here. When you see Richard's conversion, or not conversion, but his statements of fear, it doesn't feel convincing because nothing up in the four plus acts preceding it have suggested that it's there at all. So if you don't have that, why would I suddenly believe this when it shows up here? I used to always talk when I was reading The Hobbit to my or the Lord of the Rings to my son, And we just got to the part where, spoiler alert, Gollum takes the ring and falls into the Mount Doom with the ring. And I go, this is why throughout the whole book they've been saying over and over and over again, Gollum might still have a part to play. Gollum might still, it was a good thing we saved him. Gollum might have a part to play. If you didn't do that, then that ending at the end would feel a little tacked on, a little false. But it's like, oh, they've been telling me the whole time that this is possible. So therefore it works. With Richard, nothing, literally nothing has suggested he has any qualms. So why is it here?
Yeah, there's one thing Queen Anne says, his wife. She mentions he has trouble sleeping.
Yes,
She
that's true.
does mention that, but it's not even that. It's just he doesn't. This is fun for him. It's fun plotting. He's not like nervous that he's not going to get away with it or feel driven to get the crown. It almost seems like a disappointment when he gets the crown because now he has nothing left to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Alexander wept.
yeah, no more worlds to conquer. Yeah, so that part is unconvincing, and a lot of the side characters are too. Though I think
Well, I
Queen.
think just before we move on from the speech there, I think it's necessary. I think it could be better handled. It's necessary because Shakespeare does this with certain characters, but he doesn't have it be the center of the play. There are a few characters throughout that have no logical reason why they are jerks, but they are. And most of the time they're bastards, literally bastards. They are bastard sons. So you've got John the Bastard in Much Ado About Nothing, or you've got the bastard in King Lear, Edmund in the King Lear. And so these are characters who will openly say, I am an evil person and I want mischief, and that's all I want. I want to do evil things. And they never give a justification, and they don't really matter because they're sort of just plot devices, or opportunities for other characters to emerge. They're not the focal points of plays. This is because you have that speech, it gives Richard a certain level of awareness of his state, and so he becomes a little bit of a tragic figure. You give him a little bit of a chance to be at least aware, and if not elicit sympathy, at least elicit a again a feeling of tragedy. Like I think that's what he's doing here. It's just not very artfully handled, and I don't know if that's because Shakespeare wasn't because this is early, relatively speaking, in his career. If he just can't quite handle the drama, the dramatic tension that he's trying to work with, he doesn't quite know how to elevate the play to the point where the speech works, or whether it's just got tacked on at a late date or what is going on. But I don't think it doesn't work. But I see why he's doing it. You can see what is technically he's attempting.
He succeeds in Macbeth. Macbeth does
Yes.
something similar where he can't sleep and he's haunted by these specters. The difference is Macbeth is not joyfully carrying out these crimes in order to get the king. He sort of falls into it.
Yeah, and the immediate, not immediate, but because it's probably like 10, 15 years later, it's a significant degree of time has passed between Richard and Macbeth. But that is the predecessor. Like that's the Macbeth's predecessor is Richard. And so there's a number of lines even, there's the Macbeth has I'm gonna botch the line exactly. I can't remember exactly what it is, but I'm in so deep that, I'm in so deep of a river of blood that it will as much blood to go back as to go forward, whatever that line is. I have to just keep killing because why wouldn't I? I have to finish this. And Richard has similar lines like sin begets sin. It's this idea that I've already started. I have to finish
Yeah,
it. I can't. You
sin
can't
plucks on
stick
sin.
plucks on sin. That's better. That's why Shakespeare. But this idea that Richard is sort of a Macbeth-esque character, and when he gets to Macbeth, he's better at writing it. For Richard, he just doesn't. I don't think he doesn't quite know how to get or I don't know if he wanted to. I don't know if he wanted to make Richard sympathetic because that would have ruined the sort of political point of these plays. But he wants this character to function the way that he wants to give this character a chance to rise above all that he's done in a way that he'll do with Macbeth, but he doesn't do it here, and I don't think he does it successfully. But that's why that speech is there.
Yeah, it's also he's working in a Christian world, so there needs to be a sort of like nature itself needs to inflict itself upon moral criminals. And that
Yeah.
happens in the fact that Richard is literally haunted. It's Clarence, it's the princes in the tower. I think it's Buckingham also comes to
Oh, a
him.
number of them show up.
Yeah,
Rivers and Gray show up. Rivers
yeah,
Gray show
everybody
up there.
shows up.
Hastings shows up.
Hmm.
They all show up. Yeah, the tower.
Hmm.
Anne shows up in the play. Like they all show up. Yeah.
Yeah, so it
I
is.
think even Edward and Edward or Henry shows up in the play. Henry the
Oh, okay.
Sixth,
Yeah, he does show up.
Henry the
That's it.
Sixth, and Henry's son, who might be also Henry.
Or Edward or something. I thought
I
it was
can't remember who
Edward.
he
Yeah,
is. I
whatever.
think it's Edward. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah, so sorry, it's Edward. No, so
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's Edward Henry's son. So Henry shows up. Edward shows up, being saying they stabbed him at Tewkesbury. So they
Hmm.
show up. They're not even in the play. So yeah, a lot of people show up.
Yeah. But I think it's more than just like he feels guilt. I think it is the natural world is coming at him in some way. That's what happens with these things. And you see it a little bit in his physical person. There's a sort of predestination aspect to it. A person who is this physically deformed is going to not necessarily, we don't say things like this today, but people who are physically disabled are tend to be looked upon as either they're channeling God or they're the devil, right? They're misformed for a reason. And so I think that's part of it. For me, that point breaks the fun of it. It's the point where, and it's necessary. It's the point where, as you're saying, Pat, because he has to be somewhat in a tragic mold in the way Macbeth is. It's just he has utter joy in what he's doing up to that point. And once things fall apart, the reason for reading or the reason for watching the play goes away. You might as well watch Macbeth at this point, which pulls these things off much better. What did you think of the Margaret scene in the first act? So she is I'll preview this because that's an unfair
Oh,
question.
in the play, or not?
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
not in the movies.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a character, Margaret, who's the wife of Henry VI. And at the beginning of the play, she can either be seen as kind of a lunatic woman who's really interesting, or Shakespeare has turned foreshadowing into a character. One of those things.
Well, I mean, to be the whole play is foreshadowing. Every single character curses themselves, and their curses always come true.
Yes.
Like every single character who says, "If I do this, then let me this happen to me." It's like every single one of them has that thing happen to them. So he's again, he might not be the technically best playwright at this time in
But
his
it's
career.
always funny. That's the thing. It is
It
always
works, but
funny.
but everyone knows. I mean, when
Yeah, that's a
Buckingham
joke.
says,
Yeah. Mm.
Is it a joke, or is it just quite not quite technically proficient writing?"
I don't know. I mean, it's they sort of they're sort of punning on it, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes, let it be on my head, or, let this head be separated from my crown when I see Richard, Duke of Gloucester, King.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, I
like,
guess
guess
you're
what's
right.
going to happen on the next scene? Yeah.
But I guess it's like when Buckingham is sitting there being like, let me find hate where I most expect to find love, if ever I fight your children." It's this kind of thing. Like a lot of them seem to be the idea is if you take a vow and you break your vow, God will enforce it for you. Like that does seem to be kind of the idea, but
Yeah, yeah,
anyway,
I think it's both.
Margaret's fun. Margaret gets to say every single thing that's going to happen from the beginning. She
Yeah.
tells you the play from the moment you walk in, but she's completely crazy, so no one believes her. She's a Cassandra figure, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And Pat and I were in a production of Richard III a number of years ago, and they actually did it. Normally, Margaret's cut because nobody knows who she is in the audience because she's a character from earlier plays. Richard III being a
I said she is the only character. This is my trivia point of the day. She's the only character who is in all four Henry VI Part One, Two, Three, and Richard III. She's in all four of them. She's the only character who crosses all four plays.
yeah. So the audience would know who she was, but modern audiences don't. So often she's just cut. You don't need her. But in the production we saw, the actress who played her was a little kooky. And she just played her to the hilt. Like she played this woman like this real battle axe bitch who was on the other side of sanity. And it was great. I really liked her performance in that. I thought that worked really, really well. That bit of like clear lunacy at the beginning of it.
It's the clear lunacy and just like all these, but it's also fun because you watch all the other characters who hate each other, including Richard. They all hate each other, but they all gang up on Margaret, and they're willing because they don't like Margaret. So there's just this presence of this just completely batty, absolutely insane woman who even gets Richard and Elizabeth, the Queen, to gang up on her. And she even says it. She's like, "Why are you siding with him against me?" She's a great character.
Yeah. But she's often cut. So I would advise audiences to go back, read that scene. I was reading critics on it. I don't know why I got down this rabbit hole, but I was reading critics on it, and a lot of them really hate her. They really like this is some of Shakespeare's worst writing, and I kind of disagree with it. I really like that scene. Uh,
I really like the scene. I think, and again, having read, this is what the only reason why I would ever recommend reading the Henry VI plays. It is interesting because she, especially in part two, and really part three, she's really the driver. Like she's the Lady Macbeth-esque figure there, who's really pushing everything
yeah,
and
she's a
driving.
warrior queen.
Yeah, she's really driving a lot of it. Like, yeah, she leads the army. She defeats. I think she ultimately kills Richard and Edward's father, right?
Yeah, Duke of
She's
York.
the
Yeah.
one. Yeah, she's the one who leads the armies against them. She kills them. Like she is a warrior queen. She's an extremely strong. It's one of those unfortunate things where she's one of Shakespeare's great female characters, and she's stuck in bad plays, but she's a great character. And so you get why she's here when you read those three plays. Because if audiences had seen those three and were seeing this as the final in a tetralogy, you get why she's there because she is the dominant presence in at least parts two and three of Henry VI, and you get to see her here in her just completely destroyed state, and that's why the character sort of works in its own right, but it works really well when you've read those other three plays. That's the great benefit I think of reading the Henry VI plays is because Margaret's appearance in Richard makes so much more sense.
And I think Richard, and you've mentioned this before off air, Richard has an added dimension when you read him in Henry VI Part 3. So for audiences who haven't read Henry VI Part 3, and if somebody is both listening to this podcast and a former reader of Henry VI Part 3, please
Good
email
job. You
you.
should just join us 'cause
Yeah, join this podcast,
why did
please.
you read did you read that?
Explain your life decisions to us. But there's a fourth son of Richard of York. So we have Edward the King, Clarence, the next Richard the Third, and then there's the Earl of Rutland, Edmund the Earl of Rutland. And there seems to be a real, and you mentioned this, Pat, I think it's a really good observation, that there's much more of a close relationship between Richard,
And
future Richard
Rutland.
the Third, and Rutland. They seem to have a closeness that Richard isn't able to establish with anyone else.
There is a sense in the Richard plays, and I don't he because he suggests this a little bit in Richard III, but there's a suggestion in the Henry plays that Richard III wouldn't have that it again, whether it's he's justifying his sort of evilness or his sort of baseness later. But there's a suggestion that the death of Rutland really destroyed him. It really, really hurt him. And that's why he's just so bitter and angry and thinks he can do whatever he wants. Because if Rutland, this gracious, great child, could be killed, then everyone should die. Like there's almost this sense that then if he could be killed, then all the rest of you could be killed. Because what was the point? You all are so much less than Edmund was, that the Earl of Rutland was, and so I don't care about any of you. I will kill you all because someone killed Rutland. There's almost this sense, it's never stated that way, but there is this sense that Richard snaps when that happens.
Mhm. You can see this a bit in Benedict Cumberbatch's version of the character. Benedict Cumberbatch in The Hollow Crown plays Richard in Henry VI Part 3 into Richard III. They put those together. So you see him responding to the death of Rutland and then later going through the events of Richard III. And yeah, I think you're right. There's something, you're not really capturing that in either McClellan or Olivier's performance
Because you're
because
not meant to in those
they're
plays. If
not,
you're
you're
gonna
not
do
meant
Richard, if you're
to.
gonna do
Yeah.
Richard by itself, he's a psychopath. That's all you need to know.
Yeah,
You
he's
don't
a
care.
psychopath or he's overjoyed, but you see that in Cumberbatch's performance. So I'd recommend people, whatever you think of The Hollow Crown, I think there's something worthwhile in putting all the Henrys up as a set, and the Hollow Crown does that with A-list actors. So that's where you see that kind of interpretation a little more clearly. Should we jump into Olivier?
Yeah, let's jump into the movies. Let's go to the movies. We've done the
Yeah,
plays. Let's do the
we've done the
movies.
plays. Yeah. So this movie starts off with kind of an argument and on the
Which one?
scroll, Olivier's.
Oh, Olivier's. Yeah,
Yeah, Laurence Olivier's, which is that story that history needs a storyteller.
I thought that was weird.
It's
I
really
didn't know what to.
weird.
I didn't know what he was going on with
It
that.
doesn't seem to manifest in the rest of the movie. Like, he never comes back to it.
I didn't know if he was going for this like the history is written by those who have hanged heroes. Like I didn't know if he was kind of trying to go for that motif that maybe Richard wasn't as bad as he was kind of thing, but this is the story we got, so we're going to tell that story. I didn't know if that was what he was going for. I didn't get it. I kind of looked at I'm like, I don't totally know what you're trying. This is one of those things if I'm like, maybe if I knew the politics of England in 1954, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, that's what he's getting at. Like I think sometimes those things suddenly emerge. Um, and I wasn't sure if that's what it was, but it was just sort of a political discussion from the 50s and the coronation of Elizabeth II or something, and some discussion that was going on that has absolutely no meaning to our culture and time. That was the only thing I could think because I didn't know what it was.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it never comes up again. There's
nope.
no context to it. But yeah, I did not understand that at all. He does something similar in Hamlet, where he sort of at the beginning in text presents Hamlet as not to preview Hamlet, but at the beginning of it, he presents Hamlet as this is a play about a man who could not make up his mind. And so you get, okay, this is the argument of his version of Hamlet is the argument I'm going with is the indecisive Hamlet. That's what I'm doing. And it's clear in the movie that's what he's doing. Here, I don't know
I don't
why
know what it was.
it's there. But yeah, and there's a lot of stuff written. There's even a very famous mystery novel written about Richard III not actually being responsible for the death of the princes, but that stuff's kind
What
of
mystery novels?
stupid. Oh Lord, I forgot the name. It was in the yeah. Well, I'll look it up. And
Google Richard III murder mystery novel. I'm sure
yeah,
it'll be there.
yeah. It was a bestseller for a number of years. But so that I didn't get. I have to say, I think I enjoyed about everything else in this movie, though.
It's a really good
It's a
movie.
really, really good movie.
I should preface this by just saying I've seen the Ian McKellen one many times, and I hadn't seen the Olivier one. So we'll get to the Ian McKellen one probably in a few minutes. But I hadn't seen the Olivier one, and I liked the McKellen one. But I sort of when I watched the Olivier one, I went, ah, yeah, this is much better. It's just it's a better movie. It's sort of the humor and the fun of Richard. You can tell Olivier loves this role. It's really good for him. He loves it. He's just having so much fun as an actor with the language, everything. As a director, he loves this role, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It is. He almost comes off almost like a jester. He's just
Yeah.
he's physically. McClellan has a sort of a limp with Richard. He doesn't at all. Olivier doesn't at all. Olivier can
He's got a
move
little bit.
a
He
little bit.
sometimes
He
drags his foot a
moves.
little bit, but it's
Yeah,
like, I mean, I have a slight hip problem. Like, I kind of sometimes drag my foot. I'm like, he's probably has less than I do.
yeah, yeah. It's very light. He's very light on his feet. He is having yes. It's so exciting for him to play this character, and he's so funny. I mean, there's so much of it that made me laugh out loud. Like when he is at one point, he is staging a sort of public call for him to take the crown, and what he does is he is walking back and forth with a prayer book, and then he's sort of in the like a balcony of a monastery, and he's supposedly reading a prayer book, and the public is there, and and he says, "No, no, no, I won't be king." And they start moving away, and he says, "Call them back." And the way he says "call them back," he says it immediately after saying "let them go," and it made me laugh out loud because he's just enjoying putting on this show. He enjoys just being smarter than everyone else and controlling the situation. I mean, it's just so, and I think part of why it's so much richer than the McClellan version isn't so much just the lead performance. There's so much more of the text there,
Yeah.
right? It's a longer movie. It has more of the text, and it really doesn't get old ever. Like seeing Richard connive and whatnot, I never was bored of it. He just finds different ways to go about it. And even since he's not in, so the scene where they get Hastings, where they eventually trick
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Hastings
yeah, yeah.
or set up Hastings,
Well,
that's
they all step away and walk to
yeah,
the other end of the table. That one, yeah.
that's so fun. In the McClellan version, Hastings doesn't know it's coming. He's just sort of sitting there. In this one, Hastings definitely knows it's coming, and he's just like hanging on, hoping it's not true as everybody moves away. I was laughing my ass off at that scene. I thought that was so funny.
I even like the scenes where they're just in the dungeons. Like I liked a lot of the scenes in the dungeons with like the the different even just his interactions with the people who know that he's received the warrant to free Clarence and he won't do it. Even just those scenes. They're just funny. They're just good. And watching him sort of just manipulate people. And it's even fun when you watch someone know they're being manipulated and go, I still am gonna go. Still gonna go with it because I can't, I don't know what to say. Like they're just it's the Richard is the bald faced liar. He's the big lie. No one will question him to some extent because they're going, no way he's this ballsy. Like there's just no way anybody would do this. And he does, and he gets away with it. It's fun to watch. I like his scene with Anne. I think his scenes with Anne. I like the fact that they split up the Anne scene. I actually think it works because at first I thought, oh, this is weird, and then I went, oh no, it actually works better when you don't have it as one giant scene and you sort of get to watch his manipulation continue over a longer period. I actually think it works better. I like that.
It works, but yeah, because in the play, that's a scene that it doesn't kind of make sense that why
No,
she would acquiesce so quickly. She says that it's his honey
to take is
words.
not to give. Yeah, his take is not to
Mhm.
give.
Yeah, and you just like how is he this convincing? But you're right. When they split it up, it's you get the impression it's just over time he's worn her down. In the McClellan version, it's not as convincing, in part because that actress just doesn't handle the text as well, but that's fine. Yeah, that is a smart decision. So I will say I really like John Gielgud as Clarence.
He's good. Yeah, I like
I
him.
He's good, and I like Ralph Richardson as Buckingham. I think he pops out. I think
I
the
liked the mother. I liked
and
the
my mother, yeah, I think is
I thought
Claire
she was good.
Bloom play her? I
I'm
think it's
not
Claire
sure.
Bloom.
I
Another,
thought she was good. She doesn't even have that many lines, and I think she's very effective.
I would say a lot of the other male characters sort of become hard to track. Maybe with the exception of Stanley because he's bald, but it took me a little while to pick up
He also had
Catesby.
blue.
And he wore
And he
blue.
wore blue.
He
They
was
gave him a different color.
physically distinctive, yeah. But like Catesby, Tyrrell, those people, even Hastings until the Hastings scene, they when you're watching the scene, they sort of sometimes fall into the background to Richard, and so you're not entirely sure who someone is at any given moment unless you know the play, which
We do, but
we
I don't think,
do.
but
Yeah. I think that's something that the McClellan version actually distinguishes these individuals a little more clearly than the Olivier. But I mean, that's fine. Pretty much was able to parse them sooner rather than later. But I would say that was one thing that I was watching going, they kind of fade. If you're not Ralph Richardson, if you're not if you're not Sir Ralph Richardson, Sir Laurence Olivier or Sir John Gielgud, then there's a
or you
sort
have a
of
chiseled jaw of a Welshman. You're not.
oh yeah, God Henry. That made me laugh too though. He's just such a stupid looking stereotype of a hero. Right, like even the tan, like that tan has to be fake that he had. It just looks like something out of a bottle that they just rubbed on his face. It's so good. It's so funny. I really, really like that choice. It's an interesting though. Richard's death is a little different than in the play. They have Stanley and like a gang of people kill him.
Yeah, they all just have him. Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to Richmond doing it. Um, Which yeah is an interesting choice. It's sort of, I guess, one of those like Scarface stats. Like if you ever see Scarface with Al Pacino, where it's if the person is this evil and this big, you can't just have a sword fight kill him. You need many, many people with machine guns to knock him down. I think that's probably what they were thinking there. Um, though the holding up the sword into the air
That was weird. I
speech
didn't get
was, I didn't
what
get
that
that
was
either.
supposed to be. I don't know
Yeah,
what that was supposed to be.
yeah, I couldn't follow that. But otherwise, yeah,
To be fair, it's
enjoyed.
probably closer to how he even actually died, but you know they found his body, right?
Oh yeah, they did. They spent
Yeah, yeah.
years. What did they find it in 2011 or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. No, it was later. It was because it was
2016.
after I had left London. It was like
Hmm.
12 or 13. Because
Yeah.
if it was 12, if it was 11, I would have gone to see it.
Hmm.
I suppose I still could have. It was up in I think it's up in like Leicester. It was over, I guess, in Leicester. I think it's over there. But it was so it was after I had moved back from London. But I remember because when I took my medieval England class, and it ended in 1485, which is when Richard dies, and our teacher I think was a member. The professor was a member of the Richard III Society, which was the society that was like attempting to rehabilitate Richard III, and she was talking about all this kind of stuff and how they were trying to find the body, and this was in 2003. So this was 10 years before they actually found it. And I remember like reading that article and being like, oh my gosh, they actually found it.
Yeah,
And I mean,
yeah.
they're pretty much 100% certain that it's his body. But it sounds like when he died, he was stabbed by a lot of people. And
Oh,
they think it
really?
was, yeah, they think it could have just been like he probably died from like a blow to the head, but they think like afterwards they were like, there's a lot of other stab wounds. It's like it's probably was just like he was so hated that he was being stabbed to death after he died. But it's also like he apparently did have a hunch. He had scoliosis, they think, and so it's like, oh, so he actually that was accurate. He did have some issues, like he had some spinal issues, so that was not just totally made up just by Shakespeare to be like he was evil. It's like no, he would have had a noticeable hunch, and so you're like, oh, okay, well then that was actually accurate. Um, whether he was as evil as he said, probably not. As I think with the argument essentially goes, he was probably a really bad person, but he was just as bad as every other king of the period. It's just he lost.
He lost, and it's also this is the problem when you try to measure your reputation against Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote a really good play that was effective. It's essentially Tudor propaganda.
Yeah,
This play is Tudor propaganda, but it's also a really good play that lasted beyond the propaganda. And so he's going to be called out as the most evil person because it justifies Shakespeare's.
even supposedly the thing was is that what he did to get the crown wasn't necessarily considered unusual. It was supposedly the only thing that really tipped a lot of people to oppose him was the murder of the princes in the tower. And it's probably he did it, but there's even I remember reading they have when I was in this class they had a number we had to go through a number of contemporary descriptions of the princes in the tower, and there was like a couple people who were English. I think there was like a Dutch guy who also wrote of people seeing them in the towers and then just stop appearing at the windows, and everyone was basically knew like, oh, they're dead, aren't they? And it was just sort of even if Richard didn't do it, a lot of people sort of went, that might be a step too far. Like it seems like even for a medieval 1485 people, that was just too far. Like you can't kill the 12 and a 7-year old. I think even that they sort of went, you just can't do that. So supposedly that was seen as being just too much. But everything else he did it was kind of par for the course. So he was probably just as bad and did just as many bad things as Henry the Sixth did and Henry the Seventh did and Edward did, and he probably did just as many bad things as them. Maybe not Henry the Sixth, but the other ones probably
Yeah.
did just as many bad things as they did.
Yeah, Henry VII was a bastard, as I understand it.
Well, that's why I love at the end of the McKellen version, they have him actually, because the whole thing, they have him actually
Yeah.
look at the camera. That's the only interesting thing Henry the Seventh ever does in any of these things. So throughout the McKellen one, you know, Ian McKellen will look at the camera and sort of and then he'll kind of give this glint in his eye, and then he does his little speeches as he kind of invites the audience in to enjoy the sort of murders that he's done, and no one else does it. And then right when Richard dies, at the end of the Ian McKellen one, Henry VII looks at the camera and gives the exact same look as if like, "Hey, now it's my turn." And I think they're acknowledging the fact that, oh well, the next guy's gonna just do the same things as the last one.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of that.
That's one of the benefits of making a movie in the late 20th century instead of, you know, making doing a play about the grandfather of the person who could execute you for treason at any point, is you could make them kind of into a bad guy. Yeah, do you want to transfer into
Yeah,
the
let's go to the end.
McClellan?
Let's go to
Yeah,
that.
this is also the first Richard III I've seen, and I
That was the
also,
first one I saw, yeah.
yeah, I also have a lot of fun with this. Harold Bloom actually said this is the best Richard he's ever seen. So I
I don't know if
maybe,
I buy that, but
yeah,
it's
or McClellan.
fun.
McClellan is the best Richard. I don't know if this
That
production,
seems maybe,
yeah,
maybe. I
more
don't know.
pleasant.
I really liked Olivier's. I'd have to kind of compare them a little more closely, but I mean, it's mad. Like, right? It's insane.
Yeah, I think starting from the opening, they do the end of the War of the Roses with Henry the Sixth and his son Edward in like a bunker somewhere, and then Richard rides in on a tank, knocks down the wall, and they throw in gas. And so you just as he comes in with the gun and kills the king and his son, he's breathing through the gas mask, and they're clearly doing a Darth Vader voice. You know, that this is the Welcome to the 21st Century. They're invoking the great cheesy villain of movies, Darth Vader. This is before you even get any Shakespeare verse whatsoever. So right away they're going like, this is cheese, and this, you know, this Renaissance stuff is going to work in a contemporary setting, and it's really fun, that introduction. Yeah, I love the gas mask detail and whatnot. It is bizarre. It's over the top, and then there's 9.5 minutes. I looked because no one was talking. It's like, how long are they gonna go without text? And it's 9.5 minutes, and he starts with the famous opening speech of Richard III, and he finishes it while urinating.
Yeah.
He starts giving it to everyone, which to the public they're celebrating the victory of Edward. And the first few lines sound celebratory, but then they become critical of Edward. They say he's hanging with a lascivious woman to the sounding of a
No, the
lute.
lascivious pleasing, yeah, the
This,
lascivious pleasings of a lute, is that right?
yes, yeah, I think that's it. Um, and in that, when he says that, they cut to him going into a bathroom, and he finishes the speech while urinating. It's a really like fun, bold choice to start something up. I really like that. But you're right. He is playing this character bonkers.
Yeah. I mean,
He's
it's mad.
he's
It's just it's great.
yeah, and it's not only that. Like you get a real insight when um Tyrrell tells him he's going to kill the princes in the tower, and he's watching a video of himself being crowned. He's just watching this like 35 millimeter over and over again. And Tyrrell then leans in to tell him, it is so, as in, I'm
It
going
is
to do
done.
it.
Yeah.
It is done. Yeah. And he just clearly well, maybe not clearly, but he seems to have an orgasm at
Yeah.
that point.
No, I think he did. Yeah.
That's what he's going for. He's just incredible, and it's really, really, really disturbing and really fun. Because otherwise, Richard is like utterly unsexual in the play, in the Olivier version.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to care about like becoming king so he could bed women. In fact, he's critical of Edward for that. Like he's just hanging out with this chick all day. He's not being manly. You know, Richard has this kind of manliness to him, and so you don't get any kind of sexuality from him. He doesn't seem to be sexually interested in Anne. He doesn't seem to be sexually interested in his niece, who wants to marry after he's gotten rid of Anne. They're just tools for him to get power. And it's not even that, like, you're not even quite sure why he marries Anne. He doesn't need to. It's almost like
He just does it to
he
win.
he just does it because he killed her father-in-law and her husband, and look, I can still make her marry me. Right?
Yeah.
Like
I
it's a
think it's a
power
conquest.
thing.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
conquest thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not a sexual conquest because
No.
he's not you know, he never
It's a
expresses
conquest
it.
over. I think he sees it as a conquest over. He can still beat them. He can still beat Edward and Henry even in death. he can still win over the men, not over the. He doesn't really care about her. He's lording it over their dead bodies, literally, as the corpse is being brought through. He's lording it over them. It's another chance for him to beat Henry and Edward. That's what I think it is, anyway.
Yeah, I think yeah, that makes sense to me. But here in that scene, that's the first time we get like Richard's sexuality, and yeah, boy, is it a boy, it is a choice. That is what's going on there.
And I mean that's the thing with this movie is that the Ian McKellen one, it is just a series of choices, and some of them are insane. Like Richard with his Gatling gun riding across a jeep, firing at fighter
Mhm.
planes overhead.
Mhm.
It is like wow, he really went for it. There's a lot of choices. Some of them are interesting. I like the idea of, because some of it feels like, well, we're going to make Shakespeare, you could see it as pandering a bit. Like we're going to make Shakespeare accessible to a modern audience. The Olivier version feels no real need to explain to you who the Woodvilles are or why they don't like them. It just says they are not of our caliber. And you're sort of just meant to go, okay, I guess they're not. Whereas this one is like, which I kind of appreciate, it says, like, no, we're going to go and make them Americans.
Mhm.
That's why he doesn't like them. They're Americans. And they're going to be like, we're going to have Robert Downey Jr. play them. And we're going to have him arrive on a Pan American plane just to
Mhm.
make it really
Mhm.
clear they're Americans.
Yeah, it's like an
That's
Edward
why
the it's like an Edward the Eighth thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like Edward the Eighth. We're way before that. Yes, Edward the Eighth. Yeah, and what's her name? Simpson.
Hmm.
They're doing that, and I'm guessing they're doing the same period, and they're doing that Wallace Simpson, Henry Edward the Eighth kind of thing, and I think it's actually like yeah, that's effective. It makes
Makes sense.
if you, but the thing is, I don't know how many people would pick up on that, would notice like oh they're Americans. Like I'm not 100% certain, but being familiar with it, you kind of go, "Oh, that's a clever idea." That makes it clear why Edward wouldn't like them. It's a class and a national thing. Like I actually get that. So some of the choices are effective. Some of them are completely batty, and you just gotta go, okay, because we're gonna do this now.
Yeah.
Um,
The
I
reverse
guess I
is
guess
that
we're gonna have
scene.
I guess we're gonna have a Nazi boar flag. It's like I guess we're going to this.
Yeah, that was his sigil. I guess a
It
boar
was his
was
sigil.
his
Yes, he
sigil,
was
but
the boar,
making him into clearly a fascist leader, like a
which
Mussolini,
is
type,
I,
which
I
makes
get
sense.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a bad, but it feels like it was like we're gonna make this accessible to a modern audience, and we're gonna do that by really making it clear, like this is what Richard is. He's like a Mussolini, like a Hitler, like that's what this guy is, and it can sometimes be a little heavy-handed. Again, the boar scene where he's like, but again, he's got a couple moments where I love you can tell he's clearly channeling like Hitler videos. Like there's the one where he's like, I am not in the vein, and he does the head nod thing that Hitler sometimes does in Sweden. I'm like, oh, that was clever. Like you can kind of
Okay.
notice these things and see what he's doing, and you're like, oh, these are it's a good. There are choices. They're definitely making strong, definitive choices. Sometimes maybe a few too many strong choices, but it's kind of hard to hate on it because it's just
Yeah, I mean it's a strong
fun.
play, right? I mean
Yeah,
it's a a kind of a romp, like a bloody romp. It's
yeah.
just
It's
real.
it's it's Carnival. Like
Yeah.
it's Carnival. Like this
Mhm.
is Carnival.
Mhm.
You're meant. This is the let's see the world turn upside down, total topsy-turvy, so that we can appreciate the world that we currently have, like the real stable world, and we will appreciate the real stable world by watching everything be in the wrong place. I really think that's what this is.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with
and
that. I think so.
and so therefore but Carnival is fun. That it's Carnival is not meant to be it's not meant to be a somber reminder of this so, that is clearly not what it is. That
Mm,
doesn't work. It's meant to be funny and fun and then make you go whew, glad that's over,
mhm.
and that's what you're meant to do with this. You're meant to just watch it and go wow, Ian McKellen is insane and then walk away and go that was really fun to watch.
Mhm. Yeah.
But we should be wary to make sure we don't fall for that again, because that man's insane. And it's just there's just a lot of really really fun. I love even the tr scenes on the train, like the train yard scenes just feel very real. Like I have fun with. I just think there's a lot of fun in so many of those scenes. So
Yeah.
much of it is really
His
entertaining.
line, if the devil tempt you to do good, the way
Yeah.
he says that to her, yeah, that he has really, really great line readings, really lovely, ironic line readings, which are very different from Olivier's, I think. They're different paced. He has less text he has to deal with too, and so he really I don't want to say milk because that has a negative connotation, but he finds his,
Rides. He really
yeah, he
rides the lines.
rides. Fair enough. That he gets there. Uh, and a lot of the supporting players pop out a little more. You kind of can see who Hastings is a little more clearly very early on. Like Catesby and Tyrrell are very distinct people. They're from different worlds. I like the introduction to Tyrrell where they're
Yeah.
feeding the hog, and then it
Ah,
turns
why do you
into
think they're feeding a boar? Huh? Huh? Huh?
yeah.
It's Richard Six. It's Richard
Yeah, no,
Six.
I know. They're
Yeah.
feeding the
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay. I was like, did
they're
you not get
feeding
that?
Richard. But
Yeah.
then they start pegging it and you hear it
Yeah.
like make noise. So it was like I'm like, oh, this is yeah, he's feeding Richard, and then it's like, oh, they can't help abusing animals also. Like the symbolism drops away so that they can enjoy
They could just
a little
be. Yeah.
animal abuse. Yeah.
So
Um
I should be. So my one of my favorite because they often insult him for the hog for the boar thing, and there's a great line Elizabeth has somewhere in there. I don't think it's in either of the movies, but it's in the play, and she says something like "Dost thou hedgehog?" And she calls him a hedgehog, which
mhm,
is just like I think is funny because obviously it's the hog thing, and she's
mhm,
calling him a hedgehog,
yeah.
which I think is funny. So one of my sons has a little stuffed hedgehog, and I named him Richard after that line. So the hedgehog is named Richard.
Mhm. Oh, very sweet. Yeah. Um, other things we liked about. What did you think of the supporting cast outside of Ian McClellan?
I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is very good, but
No, he's not. He has a good death scene, but
he's a
um,
good death scene. But his long, too long have we borne your bitter scoffs. I'm like,
mm.
oh God, like that's like what? I don't know what was going on.
They can't
He's a
handle
very good
the.
actor, but
Mhm.
he rides roughshod over that text. Like
Yeah.
I just don't know what's going on there. It just doesn't work. Whatever he's doing.
Yeah, he doesn't know how to scan the text. So he's
No,
just sort of he's trying to make it more natural, and as a consequence, it just sounds awkward.
sounds stupid. Yeah, it just
Yeah.
sounds like he's yeah, it has a very bad. So he's not very good. Um Buckingham's good. I like
Hmm.
Buckingham. I like a lot of them.
Yeah,
I
Jim
mean,
Broadbent.
yeah, I think he's very good. I like Catesby actually a lot. I
Hmm.
like Tyrrell. I really like Clarence.
Hmm. Yes,
I
yes.
actually kind of like even Henry. Or Edward the Fourth. I kind of like.
Hmm.
It's just we have Ri- Richard. We've done a good day's work today. He just has this sort of like jolliness to him. I feel bad for them having been flown out to that clearly very remote location for like a 3 second scene, but I feel like they probably filmed more out there that got cut. Um, but I think a lot of them shine through, and it's fine. I don't think there's anything there. What's her name? Maggie Smith is fine. I think she's a little too obvious that she really hates him. But I think that's what the movie's going for. Um,
We're not a subtle picture.
no, but but in the Olivier version, the mother is a bit subtler in her
Hmm.
hate.
Yeah.
In this one, she's not. Um, the little kid is pretty good. I like the really little one.
Hmm.
I thought he's kind of fun. A lot of them are good. I think there's a lot of good performances out of the ensemble there.
Hmm.
Do you not agree? Or
I do. I like more the British actors. I think they stand out a little more. You can tell who these people are. I really like Tyrrell. I think he was given a lot, and I think that was justified. I agree, Robert Downey
Tyrell
Jr.
and Catesby. I think
and
Catesby
Kate
gets a
Speaks too.
lot more to go.
Yeah, and they're very distinct people too. Sometimes they kind of come off as like a duo who's effectively
A
one
Rosencrantz and
character.
Guildenstern, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, which they do in the Olivier. Here they don't. I was looking up the name of. Oh, I wasn't wild about Annette Bening, and I like Annette Bening. She was
No,
the
she's not great. She's
yeah,
Elizabeth, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No,
um,
she was kind of dull.
yeah, and which is a kind of a problem because they give her a lot relative to what they cut from the rest of the play. A lot of her stuff gets preserved. And she's a big deal actress, and I like her in a lot of things. I'm a big fan of Annette Bening.
I don't know what else I've seen her in, or if I've seen her
She's
in
been in a
anything.
bunch of stuff. She was in The Grifters, was a movie that
No.
oh it's a
I've heard
really
of
good
it. I've
movie.
heard of it. I
Yeah,
haven't seen it yet.
yeah, that was one of hers. She's been around for a few decades. She's married to Warren Beatty. That was his.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
yeah. They've been married forever. But anyway, she was somebody I thought wasn't particular was kind of a problem. Um, but otherwise, yeah, I really, really like the supporting cast. And I think that that kind of distinctions worked a lot better. And I like their choice of the setting as well, even though it's a little on the nose that they're all fascists or whatnot. And it kind of doesn't make sense since Richard is sort of an individualist in a big way, and fascism kind of doesn't lead that way. But it's clearly like he's using those kind of energies in order to
Yeah.
maintain power. He doesn't actually believe in like the Hegelian notion of the state or some
No,
nonsense like
I
that.
don't think there's any
Yeah,
sense of that. You
yeah,
know, but there is a sense that it is a manipulative leader who manipulated people into putting him into power, which is essentially very fascist, manipulating the population into putting you into power.
yeah.
And
Or
then,
you being above, or you and your people being above the law, right?
yeah,
That the law has to be realized within the context of this state apparatus in some way. But it's clearly like Richard doesn't give a damn about any of that. It's just a naked grab for power. But yes, yeah, an enjoyable movie, a nice ending too. It's a white heat ending where the
which
hero.
again, that's just like, what? I don't know.
You didn't like that?
That I didn't like that choice. I
Oh,
found that just to be utterly from Mars.
okay. I just thought it was like
Here
over the
I am
top.
on top of the world. And then just sort of like, I don't know. I didn't. Maybe I haven't seen White Heat. I know it's a reference to. Is it Cagney?
Yeah, it is Cagney.
Yeah, and I know. I understood it was a reference to Cagney. I haven't seen the movie, but I just thought it was like, wow. Again, very strong choice here. That it's like, I just thought it was really weird. I remember the first time I saw it going, what? Because I didn't know it was a reference to Cagney and White Heat, and I was like going, what is this? And then the music plays over the credits. I was really going, I have no idea what this is. But again, I guess I got what it was, but I didn't know it was a reference to something. But I'm like, there's a lot of stuff where it's just like, wow, that is a strong, weird choice. But I guess we're gonna go with it.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean,
I didn't
it's
get it, but
yeah, it's over the top. It's, even if you don't get it, it's he's falling into the flames while laughing manically. I mean, this is not a subtle movie. It's not a
no,
subtle
it's not.
play. It's yeah. I'm fine with the kind of over the top. The editing doesn't look that great.
But I
That's the
guess
one
that was my
problem.
thing is I remember like watching this in like it probably was like 2 in the morning in the theater department at our college, and I probably was watching it on like, a giant tube TV, and just when you got to that weird ending, I'm like, what is this? Is this like a wax double being dropped into a CGI green screen? Like what was this?
Yeah, it doesn't look great, but oh, that's all right. I had fun with it.
Again, I really like the movie. Like it is truly, it is absolutely mad. It is if it didn't have the Robert Downey Jr. death scene, I probably would show it to my kids and be like, "You gotta watch this.
Yeah,
Like this is insane."
yeah.
And
I,
there's just it's pretty entertaining. It's
mm,
pretty fun. Like I think you could watch that movie
mm.
and show it to a lot of people who, and it's accessible Shakespeare that's not Baz Luhrmann, just
Oh.
manicness.
Mhm.
Like it's sort of what Baz Luhrmann was kind of trying to do with Shakespeare, but without being actually insane. It's just this is insane. This is fun. It's carnival, and it works.
If you enjoyed Richard III, check out the 55-minute silent film from 1912, which is the oldest surviving American feature-length film. The Tower of London from 1939 with Basil Rathbone of Sherlock
Ooh.
Holmes fame as
Ooh.
Richard. We also have Vincent Price in a movie that isn't a remake of The Tower of London, but it's about Richard III and it's also called The Tower of London, and Vincent Price is playing Richard III. We also have, and I've seen this, and I'm saying it exists, I am not recommending it. Looking for Richard, a 1996 documentary with Al Pacino directing and starring as Richard. With the documentary is Al Pacino staging Richard while talking to scholars about it. His argument is scholars have nothing to contribute to productions. Anyway, and check out The Hollow Crown with Benedict Cumberbatch as Richard. You can rate and review this show anywhere fine podcasts are available. For those viewing in YouTube land, if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the Talking Studios channel for all our exciting content, and follow us on social media at Talking Studios. Check out other shows by Talking Studios, including Talking Pictures Trivia, where we explore movies through trivia, Keep Making Movies, where we explore micro-budget films, Limited Lexicon, where we play through text-based adventure games, and Get the Point, where we slowly reveal a movie poster and try to guess which movie poster it is. Got a question for us? Call the Talking Studios hotline at 201-467-8679 and leave a message. It may be featured on a future episode. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to Adapt It, wherever fine podcasts are found. Join us next time when we discuss A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Wow, Talking Studios.
Next week we'll be discussing A Midsummer Night's Dream. Pat, if you could play one role in this play, what would it be?
I mean, I'd probably get like Snug the Joiner or like, one of these. Now, to be fair, I was actually in a production of this show.
Oh.
It was one of the better shows I think I was ever in. I played Lysander, one of the interchangeable lovers, because they're by far the most boring parts in this play. I mean, I guess I would say I think Oberon is probably one of the more interesting. I've never quite understood the obsession with Puck, and I'm sure we'll talk about it next week. But I've never quite understood the obsession with him as being like, oh, you gotta want to play Puck. I'm like, I don't really like Puck. I'd be Oberon because I liked a number of the Oberons in the movies we watched. So I'm gonna go with Oberon. If I get to pick my role, I'm gonna be Oberon. But I'm probably getting Snug the Joiner, and I'm just gonna be roaring extemporaneously.
Yeah, I would say, I think like younger you, Lysander or Demetrius. I older you, yeah, why not?
I'm
Um,
not saying what role I would actually get cast in. It's just like isn't the question what would you like to be cast
yeah,
as?
sure, we could do. Yeah, what would you like to be cast as?
Yeah, thanks. You would apparently not cast me as Oberon. I appreciate that.
I think older, yeah, why not? Like, I guess we're around Oberon age, right? We've made it, we survived. Because I think that would be what I would get cast in or play. It would be Oberon or Theseus,
You would probably
or
get cast those, or
yeah,
both. I think it's better. We
yeah,
actually, when we did it in high school, we had to
double
play both.
cast.
Yeah, we double cast it, which I think is very effective.
Yeah, I've seen a double cast. I don't think none of these productions do a
None of
double
them did, no,
casting, but
no.
I've seen it before on stage where it's double cast. I think that would be me. I would love to play bottom. That is the best role in it,
It's the best
obviously.
role,
But I'm
and
not a bottom. I'm
I'm
just
never gonna play that role.
yeah,
Like
it's just
I'm not. That
mm.
is the best role, and when we did it, that was by far the best part of the production. Was bottom
When did you do it?
in high school when I was a junior in high school.
Oh, okay.